Okay, time for the sci-fi fantasy weird fiction adventure to continue with Oversea Understone by Susan Cooper. Alright, here we go. This is actually the first in a five-part series called The Dark is Rising, and it made my list for being actually the series is what made the list, but this is the first book. The second book is actually called The Dark is Rising, so it was a little confusing when I was doing research on this one. I'm like, what book am I reading? What is this? Because it is totally new to me. When it popped up on the list, I hadn't heard of it at all. I actually picked this one because it was one of, I think it was the earliest fantasy, classified as fantasy book by a female author, by a woman author, and it is written by Susan Cooper, and it was published in 1965. So there you go. So it actually follows, this one's quite sweet. It follows three siblings who are on a family vacation, and they have lots of adventures and get into trouble, and those kinds of adventures sort of turn into like a quest type thing, which, is all kinds of good. Like, it's all kinds of good. I really enjoyed the sort of that adventure feel and the family feel to it. It is a little more menacing, I think, than books these days, or I don't know, like, it's one of those weird things where the things that they do that were a little menacing I found very shocking, but we probably do different things that we don't feel like are shocking now but probably will in the future, so I'm kind of trying to get around saying a specific example, can you tell? But but it's also kind of nice to see sort of kids just sort of like getting into mostly good trouble, like just sort of having fun and wanting to do stuff and getting out there. I think we have lots of like, no one can go anywhere or do anything kind of mentality, and it's like, why not? Like, go play. That's my generation. Go play. Um, and so that was, and especially because they're on vacation. One of the cool things about it is also that their parents are pretty distant, but they do like their uncle, and he's very sort of mysterious and, just comes in and out, and it's just, they like him, but he's a bit strange. And the town feels like, he's sort of the strange guy, but like, he's kind of like kind-hearted, and that was all good. I really enjoyed that. Now, one of the beefs I have to pick with this one, though, is that I wouldn't really call it fantasy. I don't know if the series gets to the place of fantasy, but it really is more adventure. There were some sort of, you know, mystical, almost mystical elements. I would say more, this actually lands more in the realm of myth. I'm a huge fan of myth, but it is pretty sort of historical myth as opposed to, something unexplainable might happen right now. Like, it's a little more history-y, which is fine. It's just not super my thing. And also, to me, this sort of skirts the edge at all, of whether or not it's fantasy. I would say myth. I would go as far as mythic, but lightly mythic slash historical, I would say, with those two things. I love this, but one of the things I loved about this is the spirit of the kids. They're rambunctious and they get into trouble and they like to explore, and they're pretty smart and they're pretty savvy, and because there's three of them, sort of, it's actually a good dynamic because they can go off one or two, or and so stuff can happen individually, which was also kind of cool to see. I'm not used to that. I didn't realize how much I read, especially that's YA. This would now, I guess, be considered YA. Even though I would say it's kids. Like, I can't remember the ages of the kids, but they're, 12, 8 to 12, maybe? Not in the teens. Not in the teens, which is when I think YA starts. Is that, usually any kids or YA stuff is first person, and this isn't. It's third, so you can follow the different characters at different times, and so that has a different rhythm to it. For me, this really kind of reminds me of sort of like Enid Blyton, or something of that ilk, like kids adventure story. So I enjoyed it from that perspective, not so much like, oh, this is a big fantasy novel, all that I'm reading. So yeah, but I did like the characters. I like the adventure. I like the setting. It's in England somewhere, and vacation-y, and you know, there's a beach and they go sailing and have picnics and grass and like nature, but not like way out nature. Like, you know, there's houses nearby. It's so funny. Now that I think about it, I can literally see like what the house looked like and how far it was from the water and all that. And I didn't realize how much it really had sunk in. Oh my gosh. There was only, for me, there was only a few things that didn't work. One thing, it's just sort of like one of those unfortunate of the time things, is some of the terminology in terms of race is a little just not what we would say now. It comes up a lot with the kids in terms of what kind of games that they would want to play. And so it's just, for me, it was a little uncomfortable. Although I think at the time no one would, not no one, but the majority of people wouldn't bat an eye. So that was a little unfortunate. And my next question is it essential to the genre or to, you know, this collection of like this list that I'm building, using, creating, adding to? And I'm stumped on this one. I am going to continue reading the series probably, and I don't think I can say for sure without reading more, because as I said, this one doesn't have a lot of fantasy elements, so I wouldn't actually put it on there. It did make me realize though, like, it's probably the kind of thing that when you read as a kid has a really strong impact. And for me, like, I enjoyed it as a sort of fun light read, but it didn't hit my heart as much as some other books, but that maybe it would if I had read when I was younger. That said, it sort of kind of reminds me of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which is a more recent series that has a sort of similar, although way more direct, mythic connection. But it's sort of like, for me, I might put in this sort of category on my list, I might put Percy Jackson, whereas if I had read this as a kid, I might put this. I think they feel pretty similar. It's just also in terms of style too. This one's a bit slower. It's adventure, which we don't always see. We often see action or, you know, fantasy, but it's adventure. There's a puzzle, there's a quest, we've got to find out, we have to move forward. What does this mean? How are we going to do this? I love that. I really do love that. And I enjoyed those elements to it as well. Am I happy I read it? That's one of my questions for me. Yeah, like, again, as I said, like, for me, I think I would have been happier if I had read it as a kid. I did enjoy it. I said I'll continue the series, but the truth is I'll probably continue the series, but I don't know. Like, the books are pretty short, so it's not too hard, but would I pick this over something else? I'm not totally sure. Like, would I pick the next book in the series over something else? I don't know. I guess I'll find out when my library hold comes in. And so, like, I'd recommend it to anyone who is looking for a sort of adventure-spirited kid book. Although for me, I probably would be more likely to recommend something Percy Jackson, but I have to keep reading the series to say for sure. So that's kind of a weird one. I would read more from this author. This is sort of the big thing that she is known for, although she does have a couple more series that have been, or a series that's more recent called The Boggart, and then a book that came out in the past couple of years that, again, has a sort of historical, mythical element to it. So that's definitely her jam. So I'm just going to share what I'm reading next before I go into some sort of spoilery thoughts for the people that have already read the book. And so what I'm going to be talking about next is War for the Oaks by Emma Ball, which is an urban fantasy book from the 80s, and it sort of was a pioneering title for urban fantasy. So, all right, now we're going into sort of the spoiler zone, some further thoughts for people that have read the story, and I'm going to like come right out with sort of the last thing in the book, so if you haven't read it or don't want to know, this is the time to say ta-ta for now. And that is, I don't know, I knew this was mythic, but you get the sort of hint pretty early-ish in the book that it's going to be Arthurian, but like there's no magic. They have this quest, they're looking for the Holy Grail out of all things, and they have this, and that's cool. Like, that was all cool. I really enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed that the kids were like these days you never have kids with matches in their pockets. You know, like, that just, like, what 10-year-old has matches in their pockets? They just, I don't know, maybe they do. I'm not around kids that much, but we're so safe havened to our kids. Anyway, But like they find out, and then the lacerated moment when they find out that their uncle is Merlin. Like I was kind of like, what? Like I was like, that's awesome. But I'm also like, I wanted stuff like that like way earlier in the book. Like you get the Arthurian feel, like that what they're looking for. It's old. It's Arthur. It's oh my god, could this be like that kind of feel to it? But like, I'm like, I want some magic, and oh my god, they kidnapped a kid. Like tied him up to and then to a chair, and like there's like the evil vicar, pretend vicar type guy that does that, but like two other people are like in for that because they're in it for the money. I was all like, what? This is crazy. This is all crazy. Like, I can't imagine that we'd see that in a book today, but I don't know, maybe we do. I'm trying to think of some sort of YA stuff I've read, and maybe that does happen, but I guess it's just because the kids are so young. Like they're real. I think they are sort of like 9, 10, 12 or something like that. Like to think of someone like reading a kid's book when you're a kid about getting abducted. Like seriously? So anyway, I don't know if I'm going to keep reading. If anyone's read the series, I'd love to know whether or not they recommend to keep reading, because I did enjoy it. I just don't know if I'm in it for 4 more novels when there's so many other titles that I want to explore. And because this one, I'm not sure how much magic there's going to be in it. And if there's fantasy, it's not like this is more history or adventure. Or, it's not really any magic. So the adventure I like, but it's not what I'm doing this exploration for. It'll be interesting to see how often myth comes up, because I do like myth. It just wasn't what I was expecting. So anyway, there you go. Oversea, Understone. Let me know your thoughts. If you're going to do spoilers, say spoiler. Just for the other people. Alright, thanks for watching.